Hello and welcome back to the channel for my Doctor Who Series 13/Flux full trailer breakdown. Yeah, apologies for the slight wait on this one. The trailer was released about a week and a bit ago now on the Graham Norton Show. I wasn't at home when the trailer was released and then immediately afterwards as well, so that's why it's taken a bit of a while to get this out there. But look, without further ado, let's just get straight into it. We've got 44 individual shots in this trailer, which is exactly twice as many as in the first trailer. As it happens, in the first trailer there were 22 shots, now we've got 44. So let's just get straight into it with the first shots, or first couple of shots, which show the Doctor staring upwards with a hand outstretched, pointing the Sonic in the air. She seems to be sending some sort of shockwaves up into the atmosphere, or possibly some message, or creating some sort of force field or something, or scanning for something. There are so many possibilities that it could be with the Sonic, because, you know, the Sonic is used for so many things. But she does flinch as she's doing it, so it appears to be something pretty powerful. We then get the first of our guest actors for the series, or guest characters. Penelope Mcgee is the actress, I believe, playing a character called Mrs. Hayward. That was leaked on a CV months ago, I think. It's been going around for a while, and she says it's happening again. She's in period dress, she's in some sort of churchyard, so I don't know whether this could be to do with the Weeping Angels, perhaps, for reasons that I'll go into a bit later on when we get to them in the trailer. Obviously that phrase, you know, it's happening again, appearing at this point in the trailer, and given, you know, what we know about the Flux and the whole way this series is going to fit together, you know, could this be referring to the Flux or some sort of freak event which is linked to the Flux, which is reoccurring across different time zones and across time and space and all over the place? Or is it just something more local, more episode specific? It's not quite clear, but as I say, the positioning of this in the trailer so early on, I think, would suggest that perhaps this is something to do with the overarching arc for the series. We get another of our guest cast directly after this. It's Sarah Powell in the role of Mary Seacold, a Crimean War nurse. This hasn't been officially confirmed, but again, it's one of those things that's been going around for months now. I think, again, it was actually leaked on Sarah Powell's CV, this bit of info, and it's not been officially confirmed by the BBC, but it is pretty obvious by this point that she is playing Mary Seacold. And this shot provides a bit of context for, / leads into, the shot from the previous trailer. I'm the Doctor, this is Yaz, this is Dan with the 13th Doctor pointing at Yaz and Dan behind her. Next we see Yaz smiling in her period dress again, which we saw in the previous trailer and also at the filming in Liverpool at St George's Hall. And as for who she's smiling at, you know, could it be Dan? Could it be Kevin Mcnally's character, who's apparently called Jericho? That bit of information isn't actually from the trailer or anything to do with it, but a press pack which has subsequently been released. Then we have that shot that might be giving you a bit of deja vu, the shot of Dan sort of seemingly in prison or in a cage of some sort, which of course we first saw a variation of way back on New Year's Day in that teaser trailer that introduced John Bishop to us as Dan. It was one of those little cutaway scenes basically when his friend is talking to him about his horoscope and what have you. And in my most recent video, What's the Deal with Dan, I discussed the possibility that Dan has perhaps been imprisoned here by new alien Carvinista, and that this is how he meets the Doctor. Then we get something quite different to what we've seen in the trailer so far, this extremely impressive VFX shot of a load of Sontaran ships in some sort of city environment, possibly, you know, some sort of dock somewhere or production line. I have seen it suggested by quite a few people that this is perhaps Liverpool or an alternate Liverpool or future Liverpool that's been taken over by the Sontarans. But personally, I don't know, I'm not quite so convinced by that, at least just yet, just because the buildings on the horizon don't seem to match Liverpool's pretty distinctive, let's be honest, skyline. Now, this is where things get particularly interesting. So, in that same press pack, there was an interview quote from Chris Chibnall, which talks about two aliens called the Ravagers, a couple of aliens. He specifically referred to them as a duo. Obviously, in the Flux is Coming teaser, the Doctor referred to creatures called the Ravagers, and in one of the promo pics released alongside this trailer, we've seen this pair of aliens, basically one sort of male-looking, one more female-looking. So it would seem that they are the Ravagers, and in this shot, our first sort of exposure to them, we get this very very strange effect of one of them sort of splintering, I think is the best way I can describe it. I'm not quite sure if it's sort of coming together with the bits coming inwards, or if they're spreading outwards and it's sort of exploding or fizzling away into the atmosphere somehow. But if one thing's for sure, is that it's a very, very strange effect. Very good effect, but yeah, very, very weird and very alien looking, and I don't have a clue what's going on here. Something a bit more familiar now, we have a shot of the Doctor in the TARDIS saying, "Why don't I know about this?" Which, yeah, speaks for itself really. I think again, like that line about something happening again, I think this does also refer to the Flux, the overarching mystery of the series. Clearly, you know, something is going on, something sparked the Doctor's interest in the first episode, which I would assume this has come from. And then to complement this, we get a shot of the TARDIS exterior, a CGI shot of it with some obscure alien landscape or patch of space in the background. We have heard hints in interviews and stuff that this series is going to take us, you know, beyond our own dimension and beyond our own universe. So could that be what's going on here? Could the TARDIS be travelling into a different patch of space somewhere, or into a different dimension perhaps? Then more guest characters. This one was instantly recognisable to me because I've seen all of Line of Duty. It's Craig Parkinson, who of course played Dot in Line of Duty in the first 3 series of that show. And not to spoil it if you haven't watched it, but he was a pretty significant character, I think it would be fair to say. So he's got pedigree, he's a good actor. What else to say beyond that really? I'm just excited to see him in Doctor Who. I was surprised to see him in this trailer actually, because, you know, we hadn't heard beforehand that he was going to be in it. Unlike those 2 other guest actors, this hadn't been leaked on his CV or anything, so it was just a total surprise to see him crop up on the TV screen in the middle of Graham Norton. Also of note in this shot is the house behind him, which eagle-eyed viewers and fans and location aficionados will recognise as Dyffryn or Dyffryn House. I never know quite how to say these Welsh place names. But yeah, it's in Wales near Cardiff. It's a house which has been used before in Doctor Who. The house and gardens have both been used in different episodes. So most notably, we had the house in Forest of the Dead, and also in the Sarah Jane Adventures episode, The Eternity Trap. And most recently, some of the gardens featured as the home zone in Kablam. Then we get another guest actor that again we did actually know about beforehand, just because she was spotted filming on a beach with a weeping angel. It's Annabelle Scully, I believe that's how you pronounce her surname. She's been in stuff like the Salisbury Poisonings, I think. I saw her in that, though I don't remember much about her character. And she's been in other stuff as well, but nothing that I've watched, I don't think. I do get the vibe that her and also Craig Parkinson's character, actually, these 2 are both perhaps time agents of some sort, you know, if not your traditional time agent like Captain Jack, you know, some sort of similar idea of an agency or organisation which is sending investigators across time to investigate the Flux or what have you. I think also the Doctor's narration at this part in the trailer, which is continuing on from her previous line to say, "and who else does," sort of does imply that these 2 characters do know something about the Flux and the whole mystery, possibly that she doesn't, or, you know, are possibly involved with things in some way, in some covert way, or perhaps there's something more sinister to them, perhaps they're villains. Who knows? We've got furry doggo himself, Carvinista, next. Our first exposure to this now pretty familiar character, I think it would be safe to say. We've seen quite a lot of him since the trailer went out, and he's played by actor Craig Ells, who also played Dan's workmate in that teaser trailer that introduced Dan. It remains to be seen whether the 2 characters are connected, or if that workmate character was just a one-off and a simple case of actor reuse. There could be more to it, there could not. At this point, it's difficult to say exactly which way to swing with that, really. We have another of our guest characters, who I believe at time of recording is still unnamed, but we do know the actor. It's Robert Bathhurst, who I believe has been in, I don't know, some stuff that I haven't watched, maybe like Downton Abbey or something like that. I'm not quite sure, maybe some period stuff. But yeah, he seems to be playing a sort of general or military man of some description, and he says the line, "very odd," presumably in response to some sort of alien manifestation or, you know, something that's been going on. Some people have suggested that he's perhaps part of UNIT, but I'm not so sure on that one myself. I just don't really see it happening, to be honest. I think it's probably more likely that he's just a period army character from a period army episode. Then we have one of the best moments of the trailer, a Sontaran on a horse. which is something that, I never thought I'd be saying. It just looks fantastic and is instantly iconic and great and amazing and just suits the Sontarans so well. Oh no, actually, this is the best moment of the trailer. The Ood. Oh my god, I actually audibly gasped when this came up on the TV screen in the middle of Graham Norton. I just thought, oh my god, an Ood. Obviously, we'd heard about the Sontarans returning, we'd heard about the Weeping Angels returning, but no one ever mentioned anything about Ood. They've completely kept this under wraps. It completely caught me off guard. And yeah, we love to see it. It's fantastic to see the Ood again, even if it is just another cameo appearance for them, because let's be honest, that's basically all they've had since 2008. Even if that is just all this is, it's still really exciting to have them back, to have them in the trailer, and to just have sprung it on the fans like this. Sometimes it really is the simple things that surprise you the most. Not quite as exciting, but very enlightening is the next shot, which is of Yaz and the Doctor handcuffed and hanging upside down, with the Doctor saying, "I can't help feeling that some of this is my fault." So obviously you'll recognise the green alien landscape in the background from the previous trailer, with the scissor robots and the swimming sausage thing they were holding on to, and so clearly this is just part of the same sequence. Not much more else to say on that, to be honest, apart from the fact that in multiple interviews recently, Mandy McGill and Jodie Whittaker have mentioned doing a lot of stunts hanging over an acid lake, which would appear to be what we're seeing in this shot and in this sequence as a whole. And we do of course get to see more of it later in the trailer. Speaking of getting to see more of things, next up we have that extremely familiar space now that we've seen in so many promo pics and trailers and clips and what have you, which I think people are sort of unofficially referring to as Carvinista's Lair. It first appeared way back in that very first promo pic of the Doctor, Yaz and Dan released at Comic-Con, and then we've seen loads of it since basically, and yeah, the most recent promo pics have shown Carvinista in this space with cages surrounding him and what have you, which would suggest that this is his space, or possibly he's working for someone else. Maybe I'll say a bit more about that in another video, because I've got a little theory there as to who that person could be. But essentially, if we take that theory that Dan gets captured and transported here, and that's how he meets the Doctor, if we take that as read, then clearly what we're seeing here is, part of the sequence of the Doctor and Yaz rescuing Dan and then running away from Carvinista or whatever other nasties have been unleashed in this space. Again, we get a hint or two about what those creatures may be slightly later in the trailer. We then have two more of our guest characters. So obviously here on the right we have the in-betweeners Blake Harrison, who played Neil in that show. On the left we have an actor called Thadia Graham, I believe, or Tadia Graham, I'm not quite sure how you say her name. But this is a very sort of throw you right in the deep end introduction to these two characters. Not clear what's going on, apart from the fact that in the background there are some other figures in similar dress, at least to Blake Harrison's character, which would seem to imply that, he's perhaps part of a race of aliens or whatever, and basically the two of them sort of jump, and then behind us everything is very jolty and sort of changes, and it sort of looks like there might be clouds in the background or sky or something. It's not quite clear what's actually going on, as with many of the other shots in this trailer, to be perfectly honest. We get a little shot of Yaz and Dan next, with Dan saying, "Maybe we should have broken that to you a little bit more gently," to Yaz, presumably, who looks a bit miffed. So clearly there's a bit of tension here, bit of something going on, not quite sure what. Beyond that, we have seen these costumes before. We saw Yaz in that fur coat thing with a tear dropping down her cheek in the very first trailer. And then we've seen a fairly similar shot of the two of them as one of the promo pictures released quite early on for Series 13. And I think the implication is from these different costumes that this sequence and this episode perhaps takes place later in the series at some point. How much later isn't exactly clear, but they're not wearing the outfits that we see in other sequences, like the stuff in Carvinista's Lair, for instance. Again, something pretty indescribable as the next shot. I think it'd be fair to say it's a planet with some sort of clouds coming up over it in the background. Could this be the Flux? That's the obvious answer. I believe in his interview in the press pack, executive producer Matt Strevens says that the Flux is realised visually in a very impressive sort of way, which implies it is some sort of VFX of some description, so perhaps that's what we're seeing here. Or if not the Flux itself, some sort of effect or side effect of the Flux. We get new character Vinder, played by Jacob Anderson, next, just sort of staring up into space out the window of what would appear to be his spaceship and saying, "What?" Which again would imply something to do with the Flux and the thing that the Doctor doesn't know about that she was talking about earlier in the trailer. Then more of that sequence between the Doctor and Yaz on the Green Planet, which I think, it would be fair to say by this point is probably the sequence that reintroduces the Doctor and Yaz to the audience. And here they look to have escaped their captivity somewhat. I think the handcuffs are still on. Then directly after this, we get another angle of that swimming sausage thing. I mean, it's not really a swimming sausage, but that's what I'm referring to it as, just because they're sort of holding onto it for dear life as they fly through the air. Presumably that's the thing that sort of stabilises them and gives them gravity or whatever, or at least some sort of control that enables them to turn their falling into flying. Then another of those shots where things get very, very interesting next up. Some sort of desolate alien landscape, it would appear, with just the Doctor and one other figure standing there. Some sort of rendezvous between the two of them, perhaps, some sort of meeting between them. In the second shot, we see quite clearly this is one of the Ravagers, one of these new creatures, and he says to the Doctor, "Our final fight has begun." Very ominous, very mysterious. What's going on here? Does the hour refer to just the Ravagers and their race? Or does it refer to the Doctor as well? Is it something that affects the Doctor and includes the Doctor? Chris Chibnall does say in his press pack interview that these two characters do have some sort of history with the Doctor, which would suggest that perhaps that hour does include and involve the Doctor somehow, although exactly how remains to be seen. In one of the trailer's other most intriguing shots, we have Vinder doing his best Indiana Jones impression, exploring a mysterious, ancient-looking space of some description. And it's now clear that the majority of previous shots of Vinder that we've seen both in the teaser trailer and also in promo pics take place in different parts of this space. We've seen those alcoves in previous shots. We've seen the pillars behind Vinder in one promo image of him stretching his hand out and shooting something. So this space would particularly seem to be associated with Vinder rather than any of the other characters. Perhaps he's undertaking a sort of side mission here before he comes across the Doctor in a later episode, perhaps. That's a theory that has been going around a bit. And what's particularly intriguing about this shot is the 6 plinths surrounding Vinder, upon which 6 ghostly, flickering figures suddenly appear halfway through the shot. I think out of all the creatures and monsters glimpsed in this trailer, these are the ones that I've seen talked about the least. What are they? Is the number 6 significant here? Because obviously we've got 6 figures, 6 plinths, 6 episodes in Series 13 in Flux. Is that deliberate or just a coincidence? Could we have a sort of key to time thing on our hands where there are sort of 6 figures to track down or defeat or something? I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. But there could be some significance to the fact that there are 6 figures and 6 episodes in the series. Or it could just be me seeing patterns in things that aren't there. Then we get a reused shot from the first trailer of Vinder going whoa, only this time we actually know what he's saying whoa in response to. It's these figures appearing, presumably. And then we sort of jump ahead into later in the sequence, presumably, where we've got the other Ravager with her arm in the air, sort of touching a floating object that was in the previous shot. And similar to that first shot of the head of one of the Ravagers sort of splintering either inwards or outwards, the object sort of seems to break into a million pieces and dissolve almost into the surrounding space, which again is particularly intriguing and bizarre and alien. What is going on here? Do the Ravagers have the power to sort of touch an object and make it erase itself from time and space and history? Perhaps it's that, or perhaps it's something completely different that no one has thought of yet. Then something almost as intriguing next up, where we get Blake Harrison's character saying to Thalia Graham's character, "Stay away from me," which is a bit of an odd thing for him to say, really. I mean, we don't know a lot about these characters, admittedly, but given what we do know about them, given that we've seen them holding hands, jumping together for dear life, This seems like a slightly strange change of heart, to say the least, from Blake Harrison's character. You know, why is he suddenly saying, stay away from me? What's wrong with this character? What's she done? Is she infected somehow, or has she done something abominable? Does this take place before that shot or after it? I mean, I think that the kind of rocky cliff face in the background would seem to suggest that we are in the same space as before, which would in turn seem to suggest that it takes place beforehand, and so therefore it's even stranger that we start off with this sort of tension between these two characters, and then in the next breath they're sort of holding hands and jumping together. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, there's a lot of that in this trailer, isn't there? We have yet another of our guest characters. The actor here, I believe, is Gerald Kidd, and he's playing some sort of Crimean War soldier or general or military leader of some description. I'm not a massive expert on the ranks and what have you. Followed by an extremely impressive visual effects shot of Crimean War soldiers fighting Sontarans and sort of being outnumbered by them. What the hell is going on here? You know, what happens to do not interfere with history, not one line? If the Sontarans have interfered with the Crimean War, what are the consequences going to be? Could this be related to the Flux and history being in flux and space, time and what have you also being in flux and just everything being up for grabs? Who knows, but the consequences of this, I would imagine, will be pretty catastrophic and will cause the Doctor quite a bit of anguish. We then have Thaddeus Graham's character against a backdrop of what looks admittedly pretty fake, to be honest, a sort of red field in the background. I do wonder whether it is on purpose, you know, whether this looks intentionally artificial looking. Perhaps it's meant to indicate that she's in a simulation or something which, you know, is basically meant to look fake, something which is fake within the context of the story as well. Then we have our final guest character to feature in this trailer, Kevin Mcnally's character Jericho, who is looking out of a doorway, pretty alarmed, with the Doctor behind as if to sort of try and stop him from going any further. And then in the next shot, we see why. It's because the house he's in, with the Doctor, is surrounded by a load of weeping angels. A surprising number of which actually are weeping. You know, often we see them with their hands outstretched or screaming or whatever, but no. All but one of them are in that weeping pose, which is so synonymous with them. Interestingly, with a cross behind them in the background, you can just make out. Does this suggest that we're perhaps returning to the angels' religious roots and playing on that in some way? I can't see that just being a coincidence. You know, perhaps it's the building that the Doctor is in with Jericho and presumably some other characters as well. Perhaps that has some sort of religious connection. You know, perhaps it's a retreat centre or a monastery or something like that. I think the image of the weeping angels invading a space like that would be pretty powerful, to be honest. There's no use being squeamish, we've got the future to save, says Yaz, again in period dress, which again suggests to me that she's perhaps talking to Kevin Mcnally's character Jericho, and again it's one of those lines of narration which is sort of, oh, you know, does this have a wider meaning to the series arc or not? Do Yaz and the Doctor and Dan and co literally have to save the future? Is time involved with this Flux thing in some way? You know, timelines altering and the Doctor and co having to put it all back on track? That's certainly one way of reading that line, but again, equally it could just be something fairly innocuous, something fairly specific to one specific episode. And then the second sort of audible gasp moment from this trailer, the Cybermen just randomly putting in an appearance, it would seem, in Flux. Again, like the Ood, we knew nothing about this. We had the Sontarans down, we had the Weeping Angels down, so to see both of these monsters also returning is pretty surprising, really. That's 4 old monsters returning, that we know of, at least. There could be even more. They've got the costumes, and if it makes sense from a financial point of view to use them again, why not? And they look to be in that Carvinista's Lair sort of space, or at least one of the corridors that offshoots from that central room. So, I don't know, could Carvinista be keeping them prisoner? Or could they be invading this space? It's not quite clear. Whatever the case, I am very excited to see these Cybermen get another outing, even if this is just, like the Ood, a cameo appearance. We have the Doctor running across a Crimean War battlefield towards the TARDIS. Is this the aftermath of the conflict between the soldiers and Sontarans glimpsed previously? Well, I think the bits and pieces on the floor would certainly seem to suggest so. And it does beg the question, this shot, of why the Doctor is alone here. Where are Yaz and Dan in all this? Is she leaving the battleground for good, or is it just a short hop in the TARDIS? Is this the end of the episode, or something more complicated than that? Another reused shot of Dan falling through something, so not going to spend any more time on that one. We have the Doctor telling someone we don't have any more time. Who is she talking to here? It's not clear. Is it Yaz? I don't think so, from the sort of outline glimpse in the foreground. And as for the line, it's another one of those lines that could just be taken out of context or could have a wider meaning. We don't have any more time. Obviously, the 13th Doctor doesn't have a whole lot more time. Her time is coming, her song is ending. Could it be to do with that? Or could it just be to do with Flux and the mystery and having to sort of race against time in that regard? Who knows? We get the Doctor falling through something, just like Dan, but a different type of something this time, which would seem to be a sort of space-time vortex of some description. Now, the purple colour of this is particularly interesting because it could just be a reference to the Whittaker era time vortex, which of course we are now very familiar with after 2 seasons. We've seen it in the title sequence almost every episode, and also, in sequences of the TARDIS in flight. But this does look ever so slightly different. It's a bit of a lighter colour, it's got some blues mixed in there as well, and it's a bit more vortex-y, really. And it's particularly reminiscent of the portal through which the Timeless Child fell as glimpsed across Series 12. So could the Doctor be returning to her home dimension in this shot? Well, I think it's certainly possible, never say never. But again, it's one of those things that's a bit too early to tell at this stage. But I think there is definitely a resemblance there between the two things. It's one of those things they probably put in the trailer just to troll the fans, really. So yeah, they've done their job there, I think, in getting us wondering. We have Yaz shouting, "No!" with Dan in the background sort of trying to hold her back, it would seem. A continuation of that previous sequence glimpsed earlier, where Dan said he should have broken something to Yaz more gently. I think the implications here are pretty obvious. I think Dan is holding her back, possibly to stop her from trying to follow someone else who has done something very stupid or dangerous or both, and that someone is possibly the Doctor herself. I don't think that would come as much of a surprise to anyone really, given how impulsive the Doctor can be in certain situations. And finally, the final shot of the trailer. 3 Sontaran ships sort of landing on Earth, it would seem, on the Crimean battleground, in fact, it would seem, with the Doctor in foreground, Mary Seacole in foreground as well, and Gerald Kidd's soldier character on the right, completing that little trio of characters in the foreground. So there we have it, my Doctor Who Series 13/Flux full trailer breakdown. If you have stuck the landing and watched the whole thing, then thank you and well done. In fact, if you have got this far, comment below "the Flux is coming," just so I know who you are. That would be very, very nice to see. What do you think of this trailer? Do you think it was a good trailer? Do you think there were plenty of shocks and surprises? Which bits in particular made you gasp like me with the Ood and Cybermen? Please do also let me know in the comments below. Please also like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because there'll be an awful lot more Series 13 content coming your way over the coming days and weeks. But otherwise, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, goodbye for now.